David Barry reporting for Jewish Online magazine. Our special guest today is Danielle Sanderson, and she is a Jewish Olympic volunteer. Welcome to Jewish Online magazine, Danielle.
Thanks very much, David.
Can I begin by asking you, Danielle, what inspired you to apply to be an Olympic volunteer?
Well, as some of your viewers may know, I myself was an international athlete for many years, and having been a beneficiary, I suppose, of the volunteers at various major championships, of the service of those volunteers, I thought it'd be quite nice to give something back. So, I thought I expressed a preference for being in the athletes' village so that I'll actually get to meet the international and British athletes, and hopefully we'll be able to help them.
And how difficult was it for your application to be successful?
It was a long time until I heard anything. There was a very strict limit on the number of characters you could use to explain your credentials, but when I was invited...
Was that a long process, Danielle?
It was a long process. I suppose I probably applied about 2 years ago, and it was probably a good year after that I actually got invited for interview. So other than an acknowledgement of my application, I didn't really hear anything, and I didn't know if they wanted me or not. In fact, I'd heard that they were interviewing in other parts of the country and was starting to feel a little snubbed. But no, I was invited for interview, and that was a pleasant process. And in fact, while I was at interview, the interviewer said to me, would I like to be considered for a team leader role? And I said, by all means. So in fact, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm a team leader in the athletes' village, to do with venue entry, so security, screening, that type of thing at the various entry points to the athletes' village.
And how excited are you about this?
I am excited, but that excitement is tempered by the start times of my shifts. Unfortunately, in order to be there ready to start work at 7 o'clock at Stratford, I'm going to have to get up at 4:30 every morning, take the 5:24 round from Stanmore, sit on the tube, hopefully sleep for the best part of an hour, and then get to work for about 6:45, ready to start work at 7 in the athletes' village. So yes, I'm worried about the early starts.
and can you tell Jewish Online magazine, Danielle, exactly about your role?
Well, I've had 5 lots of training. The initial training, which talks about the behaviours and attitudes and so on expected of the games makers, the volunteers, and the paid staff as well. And then training in the actual process of screening, the sorts of things that is done at airports, the personal screening devices that people walk through, and getting people's luggage ready to be screened on the conveyors. So I've had some training in that, and team leader training, the sorts of things I'll have to do, because it'll be my team who will be fulfilling that sort of security screening role. I might have to cover for them a bit, but mainly my role will be trying to keep them motivated to sort out their rosters and allocate them to various entrances, and just make sure everyone's happy, and keep them enthusiastic and smiling.
And when you go into the Olympic Village, Danielle, will that perhaps bring back memories of you being an international athlete?
Yes, I've already had some training at the village, and I think it's very nice. I'm quite impressed with it. It particularly reminds me of the Commonwealth Games. There, the blocks of flats were fairly reminiscent of those in the athletes' village after the Commonwealth. This was in Kuala Lumpur, in Malaysia, and after that finished, those flats were then given over to local people, or sold to local people, which is what's going to happen with the 5 blocks of flats at Stratford, some for social housing, some being sold, and it was a little bit reminiscent of that.
And are you encouraged at all to perhaps mix with any of the athletes?
Oh, as far as I'm able to, very much so, yes, and I understand it's very likely that fairly important people will be coming in and out while I'm there. In fact, my 2 weeks shifts are really before the games start, so I start on the 16th of July and do 6 days the first week and 4 days the next week, and then the games proper start. So I'm there to help the international athletes and British athletes who are there before the games actually start.
What, to settle in?
Yes, they'll all be arriving. The different delegations will arrive over that 2-week period. So for the games itself, I've actually got some tickets. I'm looking forward to being
wow.
a spectator. But one of the nice bonuses, they put all the names of volunteers into the hat, on a sort of ballot, for tickets for the technical rehearsal for the opening ceremony, and I was thrilled to actually get a ticket for that. So that's one little perk. So 2 days before the opening ceremony, I get to go to the technical rehearsal for it, which should be nice.
After 4 years of training, Danielle, and obviously, this is the pinnacle of their career, what's going to make them strive to get that gold medal, do you think?
All people can really do is strive to be their best, to deliver their best performance, to control what they can. In a way, I don't like the fact that the stakes are so high. Only last week the athletics team was selected, and there were people who've been training so hard for 4 years who considered they'd probably done enough, and then the vagaries of selection and the selectors, it means that it was all, if not exactly for nothing, that they didn't get the big prize they wanted, which was to get to the games. Of course, the real big prize would be a medal and then the gold medal. I don't really like the fact that it's sort of winner takes all, that if you're a gold medalist, you get all the accolades and the glory and the money and so on. I think that it should be a bit more of a continuum, and people should be rewarded or respected or so on for achieving their potential, and not slated by the press for not being, say, the best in the world, that sort of thing. So I don't like the external aspects of it.
And talking about the press, Danielle, do you think maybe Paula Radcliffe hasn't had a good press?
Well, she's had elements of good press, but then there's been an awful lot of ignorant comments made when she has not achieved her potential at the past 2 Olympics, for very good reasons outside her control, or people branded her a quitter and a loser, and it's just so unfair. She is absolutely phenomenal. She was absolutely phenomenal. Her marathon times, no one has come near to the 2:15 that she ran for the world best. And the trouble is, it's such a cruel game, the marathon. So much can go wrong. You only maybe get perhaps 10 tries in your career. I suppose I was quite lucky. I did 13 marathons and then some ultra marathons afterwards. But you can only really be at the top of your game for a handful of marathons, and if they do, the best ones don't happen to coincide with that, that once in a 4-year period. Yes, I think she was unfairly treated.
And do you think that the London 2012 Olympic Games are going to be one of the best, Danielle?
I don't really know. I think I'm really impressed with the organisation and the effort that has gone into it. Just things like the organising of all the volunteers, the selection process, and then the whittling down to some people say 55,000 or 70,000 volunteers, plus another 150,000 at least paid staff. Just organising their training and rostering and so on, to say nothing of the building of the village and all the venues. It is a phenomenal feat, and it does slightly annoy me that the naysayers and the detractors, and I mean, whether we should have won the games, that sort of thing, I don't know. It's an awful lot to take on, but having won it, I think they've made a very good job of the preparations. Let's see what actually happens.
And you're very impressed with the village as well, Danielle.
I think a lot of thought has gone into it. Yes, I am impressed with the thought behind, ensuring that the athletes should be able to compete to the best of their ability. Just considerations, things like blackout blinds and entertainment and the medical centre. I've got a friend who's a dental nurse. She's volunteering in the medical centre. Just a lot of thought has gone into it. We won't be able to control the weather. That's not looking so promising. That's a pity, and I think that could detract from people's enjoyment, sadly.
And one particular theme, perhaps related to the Jewish community, Danielle, is the IOC's situation with regard to the 1 minute silence
Yes,
with regard to Munich 72.
Such a shame. I mean, why they won't, I don't understand it. You know, whether it is a political thing, I mean, I don't know about anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, I don't know, the pressure from other nations maybe. They say that they don't want it to be a political thing and that they say it's not appropriate, but to me, you know, I feel they should, they really should.
And being an athlete yourself, Danielle, is it hard to divorce yourself from politics, particular country that you may be running in? You don't agree with the the ethos of that particular country?
I did compete once in Casablanca, and that felt very, very awkward. There were just pictures everywhere of the king, and you were aware that you weren't allowed to do certain things, and you certainly couldn't sort of walk on a banknote. Because
Do you have to be immune to all of the country's external situations and just run for yourself? And for your country.
I think you do, and I feel very sorry for people like Zola Butt when she was over here and all the flack she took for not criticising apartheid. A 17-year-old girl, you know, I think it's unrealistic to expect athletes to be the spokespeople for the country.
And just coming back to the volunteering, Danielle, were you also asked to be involved in the Paralympics as well?
Well, I was. For various reasons, I decided I wasn't able to give up a further 10 days for it. So once I'd got allocated the Olympics, you know, I decided that was as much commitment as I was able to give at that period.
Do you think the British athletic team are under pressure to get a fourth spot?
Yes, they are. They are, and a lot of emphasis has been placed on the fact that there is now good funding and therefore people are expected to deliver, and you know, possibly it's counterproductive because it will make people you know, feel that they can't just focus on themselves, that everyone is expecting them. The expectation, I think, causes them not to perform properly. I was mentioning to you before we started this interview about a very interesting book by Matthew Syed, Bounce, about how people fail to perform under pressure, how they choke, and partly it's because of the massive expectation. You can't just perform what comes naturally to you, what all the thousands of hours of training has ingrained within you, because that pressure means that you actually use a different part of your brain and don't perform to your normal standards.
Did you find when you were running, Danielle, that it was easier to run at home rather than perhaps away from home, so to speak?
Yes, in that you can control your environment better. So, for example, when I was in Kuala Lumpur and also in Taiwan at the World 100k Championships, Kuala Lumpur maybe less so because the athletes' village, they have plenty of food, all types of dietary requirements are catered for. Taiwan maybe more so.
And with regard to performing under pressure, Danielle, some athletes are motivated by that, aren't they?
Yes, some rise to the challenge and seem to be able to give their best. I think it partly depends on the nature of the sport. If it's something you know is really going to hurt, you're only willing to push yourself through that hurt a few times and for really important things. So, you know, if it's a matter of, say, leaping the furthest you ever have, or, you know, jumping the highest, some of those sorts of things, sprinting, maybe giving it your absolute all, then so long as you don't false start in the sprints, you know, maybe then you can pull something out of the bag. Whereas there are other things where you've got to steady your nerves. Say something like the marathon, you've got to be careful not to start off too fast, otherwise you will hit the wall. You'll run out of glycogen, you'll you know, really suffer in the later stages. So you've got to be a bit calmer and more relaxed about it, otherwise you won't perform. So I think it depends on the sport to some extent.
And going back to the London 2012 Olympic Games, Danielle, do you think games like beach volleyball is a sport that perhaps should be up there?
Well, at least it is objective. Some of the harder ones to justify are subjective things where it's down to possibly dubious judges marking. So, probably beach volleyball has as much right as.
And maybe I had a discussion with some colleagues this morning. Whether football or golf should be an Olympic sport as well.
Yes, I'm much less certain about those, particularly artificial rules like with the football. It's got to be youngsters apart from 3 overage players. I mean, why these sort of artificial definitions? I was actually out at Kuala Lumpur when was it Kuala Lumpur where Andy Murray didn't perform? No, there was one where he arrived, didn't seem to take it seriously. Actually, maybe that was at Beijing, and didn't perform or was knocked out immediately. And for him, the Olympics was not. I think it was the Olympics. He didn't think it was a big deal. And if it's not a big deal, then maybe such sport shouldn't be there.
And do you think when participating in the Olympic Games, or maybe the Commonwealth Games or European Championships, going back maybe 40, 50, 60 years ago, where perhaps the athletes were amateurs, do you think in order to be successful and to get that gold medal and to break world records, you have to be professional rather than amateur?
Well, I would say not necessarily. Obviously, ultimately, it comes down to talent and willingness to train. And I sometimes think that if you're a full-time athlete, it's so much your life that if something goes wrong, if you get an injury, you're going to be so depressed. And at least if you've got part-time work or have other things, I was competing internationally while I had the 3 children. I was working part-time, and I actually think it was sensible. It didn't really hamper my training.
So you weren't a full-time athlete then?
No, I was never a full-time athlete. No, I was working freelance and bringing up the 3 kids. And in a way, I think it helped put the athletics into perspective and almost allowed me to achieve my potential better. Yeah.
And finally, Danielle, what's the most exciting thing you're looking forward to with being a Jewish Olympic volunteer at London 2012 Olympic Games?
It's hard to know what to expect, honestly. I just think I will enjoy the atmosphere. I'll be pleased to have been part of it. Hope to make a difference in some way and meet interesting people and savour the atmosphere.
Okay. Danielle Sanderson, international athlete, if I can call you that, and also world record holder as well. Thank you ever so much for joining Jewish Online Magazine, and good luck with being an Olympic volunteer.
Thanks very much, David.
Thank you very much.